This video will be concerned with the research proposal. Now let's start by looking at the purpose of the research proposal. This could be to outline the proposed research question and explain its importance. So the proposal must, in fact, state the research question and must explain its importance. Why should the research be undertaken? It's also to discuss the previous research efforts in the area. This is known as the literature review. So look at what work has been done previously in the area and why does that work need to be updated? Why is the present piece of work being proposed, given that work was already conducted in the past? So why is this present proposal under consideration? Try to identify the information that's required, the data that's necessary, the data that will be processed into information and which will be used as a part of the research inquiry. So what data will be looked for? Now these questions will be generally dealt with by the research sponsor. Research needs a sponsor. This is a time-consuming and expensive activity, so it needs to be sponsored. It may be sponsored by the company, it may be an internal piece of business research being suggested by the company, perhaps looking into customer needs. But in this case the company would be sponsoring the business, sponsoring the research. Now, in a business it may be financed out of a specific budget. Academic research is usually sponsored by universities and colleges. It may also be sponsored by the government, who may have an interest in particular areas of research. And more academic research is being sponsored by business, who also have an interest in looking at perhaps fundamental research that may have practical implications down the line. So there are many sources of sponsorship for research. So there's, as I said, government and private individual research. Government research in various ways sponsors various research activities within universities and also research to pick up information about the changing structure of society and the changing tastes and preferences of people living in the society. So there's all sorts of research being conducted at any one moment in time. And private research is also being conducted. This may be conducted through institutions like universities, or it may be just privately conducted. But certainly the amount of research that's going on is quite incredible. A large amount of research is being conducted on a day-to-day basis. Now the benefits of the research proposal, well, it sets out the research plan and offers solutions to likely problems. So the research proposal is important. It lists out what is being proposed, what's going to happen, and also looks at likely problems and tries to come up with solutions to the problems even before the research has been started. The proposal should explain the benefits that will flow from the investigation. It shows a feasibility statement that discusses budgets and the likelihood of clear and meaningful outcomes. The research proposal should do this openly and honestly. It should talk about whether the research is feasible. Is it possible to conduct the research that has been proposed? Will it fit within the budget, and how much will the budgets be that will pay for the research? And what's the likelihood of success at the end? What issues may be encountered that will frustrate the research, that will lead to the research having to be abandoned. Now, the types of research proposals, well, there are various ways in which research may be classified. In this video we use the basic dichotomy. Internal, this is research within the organization, and would you believe, external. This is research outside the organization. It is based in society, in the market, or in the industry. It's based outside the organization. So we have a very basic dichotomy. Internal, looking inside the organization, looking at processes within the organization, looking at the structure of the organization, looking at some aspect of the organization. And the purpose of that research would be to clarify processes and perhaps lead to changes which will be more efficient and lead to a better use of resources. Externally, organizations need to see how they are being perceived in society, how products are being received in the market, or how well the company is doing within the industry. Now, the proposal complexity, well, there are levels of complexity. An exploratory study is used to see is further research justified and whether it is feasible. So, given a proposal, a research proposal, it's necessary to, for a start, do an exploratory study, just a small study, to see if further research is justified. In other words, perhaps past research is still relevant, and the outcomes of past research are still relevant, and therefore a new piece of research is not required. So this would only be turned up if there was an exploratory study exploring the area, exploring whether new research is required. A small-scale study is limited, as the name suggests. This is widely used in business because it is cheap and fast. But a small-scale study, they're quite useful because they can indicate areas of concern. They may pick up on big issues. Even though the survey itself is small, they may pick up on big issues which would justify more research on a much bigger scale, and would perhaps suggest more management intervention to rectify a problem relating to a business where this occurred. So small-scale research is limited, but it can be very, very useful, and it is cheap and it is fast. Large-scale studies are usually conducted by professional agencies. These are complex and costly. There are large-scale research agencies in the country who conduct research on behalf of clients. The clients pay and the research is conducted on their behalf. But also large-scale surveys could be conducted by the government, again usually employing professional agencies. Newspapers conduct surveys, and the press. So there are many parts to surveys that are in the almost in the public domain. Now, the structure of the research proposal. Well, decide on the area of research and formulate precise questions to be answered. So the structure will be driven by the type of questions that are going to be answered and the type of information that's required. So care must be taken right at the outset to ensure that there is clarity about what is required. What is the research area? What's the research question? So that very precise questions can then be designed that are capable of answers. Determine what data is needed to research each question or research area. So what sort of data is required? Who needs to be spoken to? What sort of questions need to be posed? So the structure of the research is driven out of the research question, which we talked about right at the very start. The research question defines the area and defines what is needed. Now it's a question of looking at the structure so as to ensure that the very precise questions are asked and that the data that's needed to give answers can be found. Make sure that there is continuity in the proposal. Each part of the proposal must be used in conjunction with the other parts to answer the questions. So there is no redundancy in the proposal. Every part of this proposal, this outline, is going to be used. It's not there for its own sake. It's there to do a job. And every part of the proposal must contribute something efficiently to the overall activity. It's necessary to carefully explain an outline of the methodology to be used. How will the research be conducted? Will it be survey, questionnaire? Will it be secondary data using advanced statistical techniques, or will it be experimentation, or how exactly will the data be picked up? And show how the work will focus on the needs of the intended audience. The research must be presumably trying to solve a problem which will affect the organization, the company, the individual. It'll affect society, it'll affect the government. Who is the audience? Who will benefit from this research if it's successful? And how will the work meet the needs of those people? How will it answer the questions that they're asking, and how will it make life better? I know that's a very broad statement, but how will the research improve the situation? I mean, the research has been conducted for some specific purpose, to address a problem or to gain an insight into something. So show how the work will focus on the needs of the intended audience. Now let's look at the parts of the research proposal. The following is a list of areas that may be used in drawing up the research proposal. First of all, we have the executive summary. This is really a very short abstract at the start. Not very long, perhaps half a page of A4. It states what the proposal is, what the research question is, how the proposal will meet the research question, and give some very basic facts about the situation and what is anticipated will be the outcome from this whole exercise. What's the problem statement? What is the problem? What's the core area of the research? What's the research attempting to do? Why is the research being proposed? Research is not, generally speaking, conducted for fun. Research is to solve a problem, to gain an insight into something. So what is the problem? What's the core area of the research? That needs to be stated. Research objectives, the specific area or questions to be addressed, these should be set out. What are the research objectives? What's been attempted? What insight is being sought? What is the specific area of the research? And what questions are going to be asked in the context of that specific area? The literature reviews, well, this is a detailed review of recent research in the area. It's a statement of current thinking. Go back over the literature. Generally speaking, people say you should start with the seminal paper. The seminal paper is the first paper that has been published dealing with a particular issue or problem. So the seminal one is the first one. So you start, just mention the first one, and trace through the literature how it developed up to the present time. Then focus in on the recent research, what recent papers have found, what people have published in the area have found relating to this particular area of research. They found certain relationships. Are these relationships still operative? Are they still in place? Have the relationships changed? And that would be the focus of the current research proposal, to investigate whether the world has changed, whether the market has changed, whether the consumers have changed, whether situations have changed. So look at the research that's been conducted, that's been published, and it's able to find the research and see if it has changed. If it's an internal piece of work, then the company may have conducted research into customer needs, let's say, 2 years back. Well, it might want to bring that up to date. In which case, it's looking at its literature review, is looking at its own research 2 years ago and bringing it up to date right now. There's still a literature review. There is still a contrast with what was found 2 years back. Okay, those are the first 4 of the research proposal. There are some more. So I'm just going to move from 4 on to 5. Now, the importance of the study should be set out. Give some justification for the proposed study. As I said earlier, it's not being conducted for fun. It's being conducted because it is going to yield an insight into some situation. Now, does that insight justify the research itself? The research design, well, discuss the methodology and procedures that will be followed. What will the research design be? Will it be focus groups? Will it be questionnaires? Will it be interviews? Will it be an analysis of secondary data? Will it be experimentation? What exactly will the research involve? What method will be used? What is its methodology? What procedures will be followed? Specify these and discuss them in terms of their advantages and disadvantages and the issues that may be encountered. Next, the data analysis. This depends on the type of data collected, of course. It'll be perhaps, if it's statistical data that's collected, that will be analysed in one way, whereas interviews might be analysed in a different way. But it's important that there is a section on the data capture, which was be included in number 6 in the methodology, how the data was captured, and now on to 7, having got the data analysis, how the data is going to be analysed, because that's important. It's how the data is converted, if you like, into information. And that's a very important activity because that's the useful bit. That's why the research was conducted in the first place. So now there is data analysis. And then the nature and form of results. Discuss the likely form of the results and appropriate presentation tools to be used. Having got the analysis conducted, what did the information say? What did the information that was collected? What was the data that was collected, which was turned into information? What did it say? Did it shed light on the problem? It may be that the qualifications of the researcher may be needed. It depends on familiarity with the intended audience, but sometimes the people commissioning the research want to make sure that the researchers were qualified to do what they did and that the information was collected with integrity, that it's a fair and accurate representation of what is happening within the market or within society or whatever the research area was. So it may be that the qualifications or a background into the researchers might be required. It's not common, but it may be. The budget is something that should be made available if required, but the overall budget for the research should be presented, and some breakdown of the figures into sub-budgets also. It shows the extent of the research and the efficiency of the research, and also sheds light on the honesty of the research. If the budget was very small and yet the sample survey was very large and was collected randomly, then there may be a mismatch there. There may be something to inquire into. How could this happen? How could so many be interviewed on such a small budget? So the budget is a way of checking to see the extent of the research and how the research was conducted and how honest, if you like, the research is. The research schedule should show the timescale for the various activities. It's important that the proposal, the research proposal, shows some schedule of time, when the research will start and when the research will finish. There may be some slippage on the dates, but it should be controlled. Every effort should be made to stick to what has been proposed. So the research proposal should mention these. Any facilities and special resources that are required should be listed as well. It may be that some of the research is going to be conducted in a hotel, and it's necessary to say why that hotel, what the cost will be, what the facilities required, will there be some sort of demonstration to a small audience of products or whatever. This should be outlined. Whatever special resources are required should be listed in the proposal also. Project management. Well, the research activity is project, and like any project, it should be managed. It depends on the size, depends on the budget, depends on the complexity of the study, but a project manager may be required to ensure that the sequence is being followed and that all the parts are being adhered to according to the plan. So the project manager is like the senior researcher to ensure that everything works according to the way it was proposed. A bibliography is also needed. It shows all the sources of information used. They should be listed alphabetically and they should be easy to find. Ideally, they should use the Harvard referencing system, and you should look up the Harvard referencing system online. There are many sites that discuss the Harvard referencing system, and it's easy to find online. But there will be sessions in these videos dedicated to the Harvard referencing system also. But in terms of the research proposal, a bibliography is important. It should list out all the sources that were used and list them out alphabetically. If it's by author, use the surname and list by surname alphabetically. If it's government reports, perhaps put it under reports, and it could come under the subject matter of the report. There may be 3 or 4 reports into competition within a certain industry, for example. So put those 3 or 4 reports together and under heading government and competition in the sector, or whatever. So what it is, it's producing a list of all the sources used so the reader may see where the researchers have looked. Appendices are used extensively. Any material that the study uses that's difficult to find may be included in the appendices. But the appendices can also be used to show calculations that would otherwise not look good within the report itself. Calculations may be put into the appendices so that the reader can see how the figures were calculated and see how the data was processed, but the report itself is not cluttered up with calculations. So tables, charts, calculations, tables of data and so on, these all can be moved to the appendices. Now, a word about the appendices. Materials that may be difficult for the reader to find, for example, clippings from a newspaper or a photocopy of some part of an academic article. These will be difficult for people to find, for the reader to find. So make it easy for the reader, perhaps include those in the appendices. Any calculations of data, put these calculations into the appendices as well. They're not needed in the main report, just report the findings of the calculations and make a note in the main part of the work to say that a full calculation is in Appendix 14b or whatever. Just refer it on to whichever appendix the calculation is in. Notes on field work and data capture. For example, briefings of researchers, whatever briefings they have received, a copy of that may be included in the appendix. A copy of the questionnaire itself may be included in the appendix. Notes on problems encountered and their solution could also be put into the appendices. For example, researchers may have feedback that there were issues about certain questions, that the wording was somewhat ambiguous and hadn't been spotted during pre-testing of the questionnaire. Well, feed that back and say that respondents had to be prompted on a certain question and the prompting was of this format and so on. So again, it's showing honesty and openness about the whole activity, and all the information relating to the whole exercise is produced in one document, including the appendices. Now, evaluating the research proposal. Well, the proposal must be well presented. It should be easy to navigate and easy to read. It should have a table of contents and an index if the work is in a complex style. So navigation should be easy. An index is only used if it's a very large project and there are many technical terms and so on. So an index would be useful to index technical terms, index tables and so on. But there should be a table of contents. That's important. The findings are important to the audience. Whatever findings are important to the audience should be emphasized. So the outcomes of the research should be emphasized. What the research found, that's important. The report should be clear with minimal technicality. The appendix should be used to explain the full technical issues, calculations and so on. So the appendix is important because it includes any technical parts of the project, any calculations, any computer work, any explanations that are needed for the data collected or the procedures used. So that's our look at the research proposal. It's a very important part of the research. It's the proposal. It's what gets the research started. And as you have seen from the various slides in this presentation, the proposal itself can be quite complex, but it needs to be clear and it needs to show what can be expected from the full piece of research when it's conducted. It should anticipate problems and propose solutions to the problems. And it should not only set out the research question, but set out the methodology and the issues associated with the methodology, and list any issues that are likely to be encountered which can detract from the potency of the final piece of work. It's important that the final piece of work is a fair and accurate picture of what is really happening within that population, the population that was selected for study. But that's all I'm going to do on this section, so I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.